We often get really nice used bikes in because they're somewhat dated, not always resellable. We're going to do some things to this bike, which is an old DiamondBack Topanga, chromoly frame, aluminum wheels. It had a set of straight handlebars on it. We're going to make it a little bit more sellable to today's buying bicycle market. So let's go ahead and get started on this DiamondBack Topanga. So the first thing we're going to do, in fact, I've already done it, is I put on a little bit more streetable tire on this bike. So it came with a true mountain bike tire, knobby tire, and they were worn out and they were cracked, and it made sense to replace tires anyway. So it just decided to put on a little bit more street tire because that's going to match with the seat and handlebars that we're going to put on this bike anyway. It's really going to be sold now to somebody that's just looking for a nice, comfortable, upright seating position bike. And let's see where this takes us. Now, one of the things that I do, because I'm old school, and the old Schwinn training sessions used to teach mechanics how to work on bikes upside down. I work on my bikes upside down for a number of different things. So when I do the front wheel, I check my bearing adjustment. I throw the wheel in the truing stand. I then check the crank. I like the idea that the crank is right here. It's right at my eye level. I can tighten up the crank bolts, tighten up the pedals, tighten up the chain ring bolts, make sure everything's secure there. Go to the other side, make sure the bearing adjustment is correct as well. I can do that all right here. I'm not bending down. Hey, I'm 64 years old. Bending down isn't all that easy anymore. So I can do that right at eye level. I can pull the back wheel out and adjust the bearings. Again, true the wheel and the truing stand. In this case, I replaced tires as well. So all those things can be done, and it's right here at eye level. And then I think what's really critical is that I'm going to let gravity do some of the work. So I'm going to drop this wheel in place, and instead of me having to fight it to stay in place while I tighten up the quick release unit, gravity is taking care of that for me. So all I'm doing, getting my quick release set, closing it up, and the wheel is in place and ready to go. So we've already pretty much done the bottom end of this bike, and that's what I kind of just went over, the things that I call the bottom end. Front wheel, crank assembly, rear wheel, and derailleur. And again, I have adjusted the derailleur on here, but as it turns out, there's a good chance I'll be changing shift lever. So I may end up, while I probably won't have to change the derailleur adjustment, I will have to replace the cable. So there's a pretty good chance that I'll be dealing with the rear derailleur again. Once I want to work on the top end of the bike, I flip the bike over. So now that I have the bike flipped over, the things I do once the bike is upright is I will work on the rear brake, I'll work on the front derailleur, and I'll work on the front brake. But in this case, because I'm going to replace the handlebar, we're going to work on that first. There's a pretty good chance, almost 100% chance, that I'll be replacing the cables on most of these things because that straight bar that was on here before allowed for really short cables. So I think we're going to need to do a bunch of replacements of cables. Now, it just so happens that I had a number of extra sets of this handlebar in stock. And the nice thing about this handlebar, well, swept back, so it's going to come up and sweep back towards the rider for a really comfortable ride. The only problem with it is it's a 31.8 millimeter clamp size, so I do have to replace the stem. So the stem in here wasn't ideal for this type of bar anyway, so we're going to pull out this stem and straight bar, and we'll save that for another bike down the road, but at least we have a good handlebar to put on this bike. I'm going to go ahead and pull the handlebar setup out, stem and bars, set those aside. So the handlebar stem I'm going to put in this bike, 31.8 for the handlebar clamp, and of course it's the correct size to drop down, 25.4 to drop down into the frame. And I did grease it up a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and pop the cap off and tighten up that bolt. Get that good and snug. Of course, that was a 6 millimeter Allen. We're going to go ahead and put the cap on here, although I may have to pull that off later. The handlebar clamp bolts are also 6 millimeters, so we're going to pull those out. Just looking at the pedals on this bike, I might decide to go ahead and replace the pedals as well. We'll see what happens. If I decide I don't have quite too much money into this bike, I can do pedals as well. So it looks like I'll be replacing the cables for both the front and rear brake and front and rear shifting. So I'm going to go ahead and loosen up the clamp bolts both at each caliper and at each derailleur. Pull those cables through, we'll cut new housing, we'll get new brake cables and shift cables, and we'll go from there. I'm not looking forward to the shift cable replacement because replacing cables in grip shifts never fun. Once in a while, you can get away with using the old rear brake cable to replace the front brake cable because you don't want to have to use a new one if you don't have to. So in this case, I'm going to put new cables on both front and back, and yeah, I'll just bite the bullet on that one. But get each of these cables out of here, and we're going to toss them away. And we'll do the same with the shift. And I think I'll replace the grips on this too, and I think that's the next thing I'm going to put on. That way I'll know where my brake levers and shifters need to go on the handlebars. Of course, we've got these little O-rings that we're going to go ahead and slide in place. That simply reduces the friction between the shifter and the grip. Okay. Ancient bicycle trick, little hairspray on the grip and the handlebar. Looks good. So what the hairspray does is it acts as a lubricant to slide the grip on, but that once it dries, it actually acts as an adhesive. So it kind of works in both ways for us. Now I know exactly where the shifters need to go because I pre-installed the grips. Get the shifter secured. Okay, so off camera, I went ahead and replaced the shift cables for both the right and the left. That would be front and back shifters, so that when I do put new, longer housing on, I don't have to worry about the cable being too short. So we're going to have plenty of cable to work with. Also off camera, I had a pinch bolt strip on the right brake lever, and I had to replace that. So you'll now notice this brake lever is black. This brake lever is silver, and that's just the way it's going to be on this bike. You know what? I can always tell customers I did that intentionally. You know, black is rear, silver is front. Yeah, that probably doesn't make much sense. But anyway, that's kind of how we did. So now we're going to cut some housing and get the housing all set up, run the cables back. We'll readjust our derailleurs, get our brakes done. And this bike will be pretty well set to go. Maybe, like I said, maybe we'll do something with pedals, but let's just see where it takes us here in terms of all these other parts that I need to put on. So I measured how much housing I'm going to need for the rear shifter, and because the distance between the front shifter and frame are pretty consistent with the back shifter and frame, I'm just going to use that as my length for the front shifter as well. I'm going to go ahead and clean out the ends of each of these to make sure the cable slides in and out nicely. No pinching. There we go. Perfect. Now we can actually use the cable cable ends, I don't know what you want to call them, off of the old piece of housing to put on the new piece. That way I don't have to use new ones, and there's really nothing wrong with the old ones, so we'll go ahead and do that. Now the housing I used does have a nylon lining, so it's really not going to be metal on metal. But just out of habit, and I've been doing this for many years, we're going to go ahead and put a little tri-flow on the cable before we thread it through the housing. That, pop that out the front. This particular bike did use, which I don't always care for, but you know, we'll go ahead and put these liners on anyway. It keeps the raw metal cable from rubbing against the frame. Not the worst thing, but if you're trying to lubricate your housing and your cable later, and you don't really want to take everything apart, these pieces of plastic housing do add a bit of a challenge to that job. So this is where I'm going to go ahead and flip the bike upside down again. Actually, we're going to cut a new piece of housing for this as well. In this case, being precise on that housing measurement isn't as critical because I have more than enough cable to work with. Again, just like before, I'm going to open up the ends, because when you do cut the housing, you kind of pinch that plastic sleeve in the middle, and you want to make sure you can get your cable in there okay. So we open that up. You can kind of see, or not, that I've opened up the inside of the housing. We're going to pop our plastic ends back on. And this is where I'm going to go ahead and turn the bike upside down again, because quite honestly, it's just, to me, it just makes more sense to do this upside down. And the nice thing is, it's right there, right at my eye level. I'm not reaching, I'm not looking at how things are. So first thing I'm going to do, of course, is I'm going to pop my housing on. I'm going to actually pedal the bike for just a moment, just to get the chicker down to the small sprocket. I'm going to go ahead, drop it down into 6th gear, and we'll add that sleeve back on. We'll go ahead and install the cable inside the housing. Drop that back in its cable stops. We're going to go ahead and turn our adjusting barrel mostly in. I'm going to leave it out just a little bit. I want some adjustment both ways, so we're going to back it back out just a little bit. Install my cable. Make sure that the end of the cable is seated properly in the cable stop on the derailleur. Going to kind of make sure we're again in 6th gear. Then we'll grab our 9mm. In this case, some bikes use a Allen, 5mm Allen at this point. This particular one, kind of old school, it's a 9mm, just kind of a regular hex nut. Snug that up. And the other thing that I love about having the bike upside down is that I can look and I can check the exact alignment of the derailleur. And when you're looking at it upside down, you're seeing the chain as it enters the sprockets of the cassette or freewheel. So if it isn't setting exactly on, I can make that adjustment and I can see it perfectly well. So I look at this. One thing I can tell you is I do need to increase some cable tension, because we have some slack here. You can kind of see it in the cable. So we're going to pull that tight. And then we're going to go ahead and readjust. I think what I'm going to do first, though, I use the wrench in my hand. I put it behind the cable, between my hand and the cable, and I'm going to give it a little tug just to kind of pre-stretch that cable a little bit. Then I'm going to go ahead and loosen up the pinch bolt on the derailleur, pull the cable through completely, and go ahead and tighten up that pinch bolt one more time. This should put my cable where it needs to be. And now any further adjustment will probably be with the adjusting barrel on the derailleur, the adjusting barrel on the shifter, or the set screws for my limits on my derailleur. So we're going to cut off that excess, install a cable end. I always like putting these on right away. Then there's little chance of anything fraying as I'm working on it. Now we're going to go through and we're going to make some adjustments as needed. Still need just a hair more of cable tension to get it to jump up, and it's almost there. Very close. Now, one thing I did do before I even got on camera is I had pre-adjusted this derailleur. So I had lubricated all the pivot points in the derailleur. I had set the set screws so they're appropriate. And now when I look down, I can see exactly where this derailleur is putting the chain. It's important not to undershift or overshift. Overshift is a bigger problem because when you overshift, you could put the derailleur into the spokes, and we don't want to do that. So I just turned out the adjustment screw a little bit just to get it to go up into the top sprocket, the large sprocket, better. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to grab my phone and show you a better shot of what I'm talking about. So I have completed the rear derailleur adjustment and it shifts beautifully. I'm going to go ahead and move towards the front derailleur. And again, I had already cut my housing because I knew I was going to have the same length of housing for the front derailleur as I had for the back. So the housing is pre-cut. We're going to again use the ends off of the old piece of housing. We'll insert those housing ends in place. We'll go ahead and add a little tri-flow to our cable. Doesn't have to be a lot. Again, the housing is nylon lined, so it's not as though we're going to see any corrosion or rust buildup between the housing and the cable, but a little tri-flow never hurts. We'll run this through, and again, this is your front derailleur. So we're going to make sure I'm putting this in the right place, and that would be, looks like they're running the front derailleur here on this bike. So we're going to go ahead and actually run it. Normally I wouldn't run it across the front of the frame, but in this case I am, simply because that's where the cable stops are welded to the frame. We'll put our piece of housing, tubing, whatever you want to call it. Again, it's kind of a protectant. And we'll run this through. And we are good there, and it is ready to be attached to the front derailleur. Well, this is a top pull derailleur, so this is not, I don't have to run the cable down and around or anything. I'm running it directly to the pinch bolt on the derailleur, and then we'll get that derailleur adjusted. Right now I do have my shifter in 1, which is where I want it up front, because that is all spring tension released all the way in. Okay, we're going to go ahead and run the cable through the derailleur at the pinch bolt. Sometimes it's a challenge. There we go. It's a 5mm Allen on this bike. And I'm going to use that same process to kind of pre-stretch the cable a little bit. So I'm just going to put, in this case, I'm going to put the Allen wrench between it. Give it a little bit of a tug, which kind of stretches the cable out so it doesn't stretch on the customer. The last thing you want to have happen is you put this bike out, somebody rides it for the first time and it doesn't shift well because the cable had stretched. Granted, you can adjust that through adjusting barrels, but it's better to just not have it happen at all. You got that pinch bolt tight on the front derailleur. And now this is not an indexing front derailleur. Oh, it is. It is, but I've got it dead on the money. Beautiful. Oh my gosh, it's gorgeous. We're going to cut off the excess cable, put a cable end on, and derailleurs, both front and back, will be ready to go. So often when you buy either shift or brake cables, the cable will come with two different ends on it. Old school road levers used this end. Most of the current bikes, whether it be a hybrid or cross bike, anything, will use this type of end. So we're going to take a good sharp tool. This is a Pedro's cable cutting tool. We're going to cut that off and give us a nice clean end so we can easily thread that through the housing. And as far as brake housing and shift housing are two different things. Brake housing is the old spiraled metal housing inside plastic. Shift housing is actually linear. It's metal, but it's going the length of the housing. The reason is this can compress a little bit, and that's okay on braking, but it's not so okay on shifting. In order for a index shifting system to work, it has to be dead on the money. There can be no stretch to the cable, no flex to the housing. So linear housing will prevent that flex. Not so critical on brakes, and this is just a slightly larger diameter housing as well. So we're going to put some end caps on this, measure it to size, and then get this cable installed. Okay, so now that I've determined the length of housing that I want, I'm going to cut it off here. I'm going to do one other thing though. I use a slightly different tool that's going to help me clean up the end. So there can possibly be a little bit of metal that kind of covers up our opening. And actually, again, it's going to be hard to see, but that did happen here. So I'm going to use a different tool, and I'm going to get the end of the housing cleaned up a little bit so the cable will go through it nicely. There we go. And that one's actually okay. So we're going to leave that. We're going to use our tool to make sure we open up the housing so that the cable flows through nicely. And I've seen other shops just use a ground down spoke for that. And I'm not using a ground down spoke, but I am going to put some cable ends on this cable. So we're just going to use some chrome cable ends. It's not critical that they're pinched on. They don't need to be. They just need to be slid on. We're going to go ahead and run our cable through the housing. And I'm going to do the same thing with my tri-flow. So we're going to go ahead and run the cable into the brake lever, back out the barrel a little bit so we can get both slots in line. We'll run our housing up into place, make sure it's connected and properly fitted there. Get our cable end on, run our housing into the cable stop, slide this piece of tubing into place. And again, this tubing is simply to prevent the raw metal from making contact with the painted frame. Again, it's probably something that if I knew I was working on this bike in a year or two, I probably wouldn't put on, but I am doing it anyway. At this point, we have a couple of unique tools we're going to use. This tool is called a third hand. It simply holds my brake calipers together while I'm working on the brakes. And it was really meant for the old school side pull and center pull brakes, but it does work for these. You just got to pull it a little bit tighter. And it looks like to me, when I actually get to the final adjustment, it looks like I'll be making some brake pad adjustment there too, but we can certainly hold off on that. So this customer that, well, the previous owner of this bike, kind of cool. They nylon tied the crossover cable to the carrier. So the crossover cable can't really fall out of the carrier. And you know what? I'm not going to change that. That's just fine. We'll go ahead and before I even put the crossover on both sides, I'm going to go ahead and run my cable through the pinch bolt. Run it through. We'll go ahead and drop that in place. And now, believe it or not, we already talked about a third hand. I have a fourth hand too. So the fourth hand grabs the cable here and pushes on the carrier here. And I'm pulling it snug only because I'm pretty sure we're going to see some flex in the cable before we actually have to make that final adjustment. And if we get a little too much flex, I'll probably take that up at the pads. And if we don't get enough, then I'll be back here readjusting. But let's hope. So we're going to go ahead and get that good and snug. I don't really like loosening these up and taking them apart more than once because you start flattening out the cable at this point, and then you can start breaking strands of the cable. Just to keep all this excess housing out of the way, I'm just going to cut it off, giving myself just a couple of inches to work with, and then we'll go ahead and put a cable end on, crimp it. My usual thing is 3 times. Then I always like to pull it over to the side, kind of let it like that. We'll release our third hand tool. Now we should have brakes. And as you can see, they are pretty good. I am going to go ahead and adjust the positioning of this pad in particular. This one looks okay, but that one not so much. 5mm Allen, 10mm open end, and we're going to just loosen this up just a hair, change the angle a little bit, and then change the height. Now that looks really good. I'm really good with that brake adjustment. Now, when I let these bikes go out, I always want them to look good too. So I always take my little toothbrush, I clean things up good, make sure it's all clean and decent looking, as much as possible at least, within reason. Of course, we'll drop a couple drops of Tri-Flow at the pivot points of these brakes, which is right here, and then on the inside as well. Now there is a spring tension adjustment located on the right side. You can't see it on this side, but it's on the right side. And really it only needs to be on one side, because what you're really trying to do is get the spring tension on one caliper to equal the spring tension on the other. So you just need it on one side. It turns out, with as good as adjustment as I have here, I don't need to mess with it. I can leave it alone. Okay, I've already cut my housing to length. I've put a little lubrication on the cable. I've got a cable end on each end, one in my hand, the other one on the cable. We're going to run this in here, turn the barrel out until the two grooves line up, and I'm just going to turn them just a little bit just to help keep the cable in place. I'll give those a little bit of a turn, and there we go. Now in this case, I probably could get away with cutting a slightly shorter piece of housing, it looks like. So I'm going to cut a little bit off my housing. Probably can go another couple inches shorter. Okay, so I've cut a couple, and probably 4 more inches off of that housing, because I really didn't think I needed all that much. We're going to put our cable end on, housing cap, housing end on that side. Run this so it seems appropriate for all the other cables that are here. I'm going to go ahead and run this down through. This is a cable stop. The idea here is it basically just stops the housing so that you can run your bare cable down to the caliper adjustment. Go ahead and locate that around. That looks pretty good. So back in the day, when we saw more of this type of brake, they made a couple different third hands. The one that I showed you before kind of capped over the end of the brake pad. This one actually just simply grabs the brake pad. It's got a little cutout. Unfortunately, it doesn't work quite as well. It doesn't hold as tight. But I was struggling with the other one, so we're going to have to let this one do its job. And just like we did with the other side, and again, you'll notice, the straddle cable is nylon tied to the carrier. And go ahead and pop that in place, pop that one in place. Hopefully that's the right order to do it in. We'll find out here in a second. I'll probably have to do that again, but let's just see. We'll run our cable through. And now we're going to use that fourth hand again. And that actually will take up a lot of if the third hand didn't pull them tight, this will. So we're going to have the cable run through there. And we're going to use the fourth hand to go ahead and secure and bring up, I should say, the straddle cable so it's in the correct position, so that when I tighten up the pinch bolt on the main brake cable, we should have a pretty good adjustment right off the bat. In theory, anyway. So I'm going to let that drop away. I don't have it completely tight yet. I don't want to bring it completely tight just in case I might have to make an adjustment, but let's just see what we have here. It's pretty snug. Well, I'm going to go ahead and chance it. We're going to go ahead and tighten it up, and then I'll give it the brake lever a good solid pull with the intention of, and I grabbed the wrong wrench. A good solid pull with the intention of hopefully stretching that brake cable a little bit to give me a little better adjustment. So I'm going to do that. Also, because I had the adjusting barrel turned out just a little bit, I'm going to turn that back in, and that's going to give me probably enough. There we go. This is going to work just fine. Oh, beautiful. And there we have a really good adjustment, and that's just because this particular bike had a reasonably good brake adjustment even before I started working on it. That always makes things easier. So we're going to go ahead and do the same thing here. Bend that off to the side. Put a cable end on. And this bike, with the exception of just a little polishing, is looking pretty good. Okay, so this bike is in really nice shape. Again, a little more cleanup we're going to do on it. There is no kickstand on it, so I'll put a kickstand on it as well, but nice and solid. Again, wider tire, but more of a street tire. Certainly an upright handlebar, so the rider that's going to ultimately end up with this bike is going to be sitting upright. Very comfortable. I put a wider seat on it. It had a pretty narrow mountain seat on it before, so I found a takeoff that I had in my back, my stock of seats, and put that on, and it's a nice, comfortable seat. Upright seating position. This bike is ready to rock and roll. So what I did is I turned a bike that probably wouldn't have sold for maybe more than $100, give or take, by putting new tires on it, new handlebars and stem, new cables, new seat. I probably turned that into $300. Am I making a bunch on it? Probably not, but some of these parts I had anyway. It didn't cost me anything. I didn't have to buy the handlebars, I had them. I didn't have to buy the seat, we had that as a takeoff. Cables I had to put on, tires I had to put on, and of course the handlebar stem, which is ironically a $50 handlebar stem we did have to put on. But we are otherwise all set to go on this bike. So here we go, the DiamondBack Topanga, all ready to go for the next customer. So there you have it. We've done a kind of a once over on a bike, making it resellable and ready for that next rider. We're really anxious to get more people out on bikes. You know, there's no question, 2020 was a great year. 2021, we couldn't get enough bikes, but 2022 through 25 have been very challenging for the bicycle industry, for the bicycle business, for the wholesalers, the retailers, even the manufacturers. And we hope to think that 2026, that will all turn around. So let's see what we can do to get more people on bicycles. Thanks for watching. I would love it if you would like, share, and subscribe to the Fitness Store's Facebook page and YouTube channel. We really do appreciate the support. If you ever have any thoughts, any questions, please feel free to leave them down below in the comments, and we will see you next time. Remember, we are the Fitness Store, serious bikes for serious fun.